What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We're here with some more PGA DFS picks and lineup advice for DraftKings and FanDuel. This time, it's another major. It's the U.S. Open at Oakmont. Welcome. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy. Now, I'm a 2025 Fantasy Golf World Championship qualifier, and I'm joined by our PGA DFS analyst at Occupy Fantasy. It's Niromada, a fellow six-figure PGA DFS winner. Nero, happy major week. How are you?
Happy major week. I'm good. Brian, I hope you're doing well. Second biggest week of the year for PGA DFS. Can't remember the last time I saw FanDuel have a contest with a $200,000 first prize in any sport, but they have one. They have one this week, so the contests are supersized everywhere, not just on DraftKings. So big week. Be a good week to run hot, as we like to say. So let's try and figure out a way to do that.
Fingers crossed. And we're here to help everyone try to do that. If you're new here, welcome. What we're going to do in this video, as we do every week in these PGA videos, we'll talk about the top 10 plays in our Occupy model. Now, if you're not familiar with Occupy Fantasy, our Occupy model is a data-driven model. It looks at all the characteristics for PGA that are necessary for a golfer to succeed at that course. It ranks all of the golfers using our proprietary metrics on both DraftKings and FanDuel. So we'll talk about the top 10 plays in that model, see what the data is telling us. Then we'll see what industry projections are telling us, other projections in the PGA DFS industry that will tell us who the highest owned players will be in our smaller contests. Less than 1,000 players, less than 500 players. These guys will be higher owned than you think they will be. Then we'll move on. Now, we are recording this Monday afternoon, but we do have some early betting market analysis. A couple of golfers, maybe a handful of golfers, have seen their odds to win improve at a lot of sharp sports books. So we'll lay out the plans for those golfers as well. And then we'll close out the show with some showdown and weather notes. And as we've been doing the last couple of weeks, you guys really like this segment. We will live hand build a small field GPP lineup, a tournament lineup here for DraftKings on screen using the ideas and the players we talk about in this video. That's at the very end, so make sure you stick around for that. Now, Nero, as we transition here and talk about the top plays in our model, tricky to model this week because Oakmont is a venue that we don't see very often. It is not a yearly stop on the PGA Tour. So it's a little bit of guesswork. There was a little bit of a revamp since the last time it hosted the US Open in 2016. And if you're a YouTube watcher, you may have seen Bryson's video. You may have seen the Brian Bros video. Whether or not you like YouTube golf, it's a great way to see the course, how it's playing in the last couple of weeks. So, Nero, as we model this course, what do you think are some things that we can take away from maybe these videos or how the course is set up and how that plays into building lineups this week?
So we'll start with the fact that, like you mentioned, it was recently renovated. I believe Gil Hanse and his team in 2023. So this last hosted the U.S. Open in 2016, I believe. Now, for that U.S. Open, there were four players under par when it finished, two players at even. Everyone else in the entire field was over par, and five over was good for a top 15 finish. So number one, you can rest assured this is going to be extremely difficult. Might be the toughest course that they play in kind of like this modern U.S. Open rotation that they've gone to over the last 5 years or so. So 7,300 ish yards, par 70. That's long, but it's not ridiculously long. But the very dense rough. I think you're going to have 5 inch rough right off the fairway, or not too far off the fairway, and then very tall fescue even further off the fairway. So that gives a big advantage to the high club head speed guys. But the real challenge, I mean, well, when I say real challenge again, relative to being a professional golfer who tours golf courses for a living, is going to be the greens and everything around the greens. Very undulating, very fast. Do not want to be above the hole ever on any of these greens. They're really big. I think they average over 8,000 square feet. So what that really means is for something like the US Open, they can put a lot of really tough pin positions out there because there is a lot available considering the size of the greens. Now, no water. I think 200 plus bunkers. It's almost like a links style course. You're not going to see a lot of trees. Um, but it's just going to be extremely difficult. What that means more than anything is really hard to fake it around Oakmont. Like well-rounded is going to play very, very well here. And yes, you could get hot for a round, But at some point, you're going to shoot a big number if you're not like extremely elite or very locked in. I'm going to be very hesitant to play guys that I don't think have a big ceiling because you might need a ceiling performance from a player just to get like a top 20
True.
on this course.
Yeah, I mean, it's really funny how it's going to be entertaining, right? These are the types of courses and types of events that we look forward to watching professional golfers look like amateur golfers in some facets of the game. Nero, I have three takeaways that I saw in the videos and some of the research I've done. I'll say the point, and you just give me a sentence or two on your take here. The first one was in Bryson's video. He talked about his caddy was on the video as well, and in that video they were debating clubs off the tee, and almost instantly every time they just end up saying, "Let's just send driver because I'd rather be 50 yards closer in the rough than 50 yards further back in the rough." And we've seen in 2016, and we've seen these types of courses before. It's this discussion of, do you just want to just blast it off the tee, or do you want to be accurate, even though it's hard to be accurate on this course? And for me, the happy medium was good drive percentage, which is either you make the fairway or you hit it far enough down in the rough that you can still hit the green in two. That seems like a good metric for me off the tee this week. Do you agree?
I completely agree with that. Now, if I have to choose between someone who's hyper accurate or hyper distance influenced, I will take the distance player when forced with those two choices. But yeah, your preference is going to be someone who can do the full gamut. Like total driving is possibly the best stat to have this week.
The next thing I noticed from these videos is, as you said, nearly 8,000-foot square greens, massive greens, and especially if you're hitting out of the rough, you're going to have some long ass putts to try to get near the hole. So for me, three putt avoidance, especially longer putting, approach putting, however you want to call it, lag putting, it feels extremely important this week too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can get away with being really elite around the greens and really elite with your putter, but you still better be able to have another standout skill set. Like if that's all that you have, no thanks this week. But if you have something else, like you can really send your driver, you're not a great iron player, but you're pretty good around the greens with your putter. Great. I'm interested for sure. You're hyper accurate with the driver and you're decent with the irons. Your distance is okay, but it's not huge. But you're very good around the greens and with your putter. Yeah, I'm interested this week. So I like that idea. And yes, you're going to have a lot of long putts, long chips, things that are going to be trying to get up and down from like 20 plus yards away when you're not very far off the green.
Yeah, just a brutal, brutal test. And the final point I'll make is, and this is for those of you out there who aren't very interested in the data or the course, you just want the picks and you want help to build your lineups. Nero, the biggest takeaway for me is when we have a course like this that plays so difficult and so much randomness out of thick rough, that there is no better week in PGA DFS to fade the chalk.
Yeah, any chalk that doesn't rhyme with Beffler, I'm definitely down to do some fading. This is the type. I mean, as we talk about all the time in these videos, a lot of variance in golf as a game, times a million when you do PGA DFS, and then you play a course like this, and it's even more. You're just like, this is like the most variant version of golf that you can get because uh, a particularly bad lie in the rough could yield you an 8 or 9 on a hole, and it might be like 6 inches away from someone else who had an okay lie in the rough, and you basically hit the same shot. You just got a slightly different bounce. So yeah, I think this is a very variant week. I'll be very wary of lower price chalk for sure. And it's a good week. Like I said, anything that doesn't rhyme with Beffler, I'm good to put the fade on.
Which is a great segue into the top plays of our model this week. Taking all that data into account, this is what our model spit out as our top 10 plays for the U.S. Open. I know a lot of you just want the picks, so here they are. Here are the top data picks from our model. Number one, no surprise, Nero, it is Scotty Scheffler. It gets the 100 plus score in our model, which you have talked about many times before. And whether or not you follow through with it is a different story. But when he gets 100 plus from the model, we are extra interested in Scheffler. Now, you and I had some discussions before we started recording. Initial instinct, seeing Scheffler at 14.4, you may think, damn, they actually priced him up. This might be a little harder to fit Scheffler in than usual. Not really the case. Despite having 5K golfers and a lot of the amateurs in the 5Ks, pricing is extra soft this week, Nero, that we can fit Scheffler in, and we have no excuse to face the commenters who argue with us that we should be playing Scheffler every week because DraftKings and FanDuel made it pretty easy to actually play him despite the price tag.
Yeah, first of all, as we've said numerous times, that commenter has been correct this year, and I've been wrong. So kudos to that commenter from numerous weeks ago. And yeah, you saw the 14.4, and I was like, oh, okay, because last time he was 13.7, I believe, when they had the 5K pricing scheme, and it's like, okay, $700 is a pretty good jump up. And I start playing around, and I'm like, wow, well, I made a lineup really easily that I thought was pretty solid, including Scheffler and a bunch of 7K guys. And I scrolled up the pricing, and I counted they only priced six guys in between in the 8K salary range. Six. Like, it was absolutely ridiculous. So what that means is like they just shoved a ton of guys in the sevens and the sixes, and in the top half of the fives that are all totally viable and playable. And it's just really hard to not play Scotty, especially on a course like this that just really accentuates his skill set and the things that he's good at. I mean, obviously, game theory, you could say, yes, fade him, go under him. All those things, again, from a game theory perspective, make sense. One last data point, I was looking back through his starts all the way back to the Memorial last year. I was doing some rough calculations. If I said, like, give me the top five optimals every week that he's played in during that year, my back of the envelope math told me he was probably in about 70% of those lineups. So
Cool.
that's over a year. So like you could say, okay, if that was your entire sample size, you would say, all right, well then obviously playing him at 70% or higher is the optimal way to go. It's clearly not the entire data set, but yeah, it's really, really difficult to be underneath him this week, and I just don't think that I will. I was hoping that the pricing would keep his ownership down. I'm guessing that it probably won't. I think you mentioned before we started, you thought maybe he'd get up to that 40% range potentially, and I could certainly see him getting there, but I just don't think I can go under him even at that kind of level, even though it makes my old school DFS sensibilities crawl a little bit. I just don't think I can do it.
Here's the counterpoint to that, Nero. You have so much golf knowledge that we can play all the off the wall 5K and 6K guys that no one else is playing, and that's where we can use your golf knowledge and your old school DFS ability.
Yeah, 100%. I've already found about nine different guys in the 5K range that I would absolutely play on Scheffler lineups that I don't think many people would. So, yeah, I mean, I like I said, it's really, really hard. If it was a different kind of course, I think I would be more okay with
Sure.
being underneath him a little bit. But this is the course that will absolutely just totally accentuate everything that he does really well, and he's just really hard to get away from.
And just really quickly, if you've been following Scheffler, you know that there have been times when he's been shaky with the putter. So you may think, oh, maybe these are the types of greens that could give him trouble. Not so fast. He's top five in this field in putting on fast greens and lag putting on fast greens and approach putting on fast greens, three putt avoidance on fast greens. He fits that as well. So not really many red flags to have with Scheffler. Let's move on. The next stud that our model likes, he's number two. It's Colin Morikawa at 9,800. Surprisingly, there it's not Bryson, it's not Rom, but it is Colin. Rom's a little bit lower here, but talk to me about Colin, how you anticipate his skill set fitting this course.
Yeah, he started out really well at the Memorial. Kind of went backwards from there, which I thought was a little surprising. But yeah, when you're speaking about profiles, like Morikawa is what you want. And Scheffler is just a better, some in many areas, much better version of Morikawa. It's like if Morikawa had a better short game and he was better off the tee by a significant margin, then he would be Scotty Scheffler because he's an elite iron player. He's very good total driving, keeps the ball in front of him, keeps the ball in control. He's good enough with the putter, good enough around the greens, and he really thrives in these types of setups where you really have to be accurate and have some distance. in order to succeed. And again, the one thing I will say about these greens, they're so slopey and they're going to be so fast that it actually negates the advantage of a really good putter
Yep.
because it's going to be hard for anyone to make a lot of long putts. It's going to be harder to get lag putts close to the hole. And a lot of times the player Corey Connors is actually a great example of this. A lot of times bad putters, they putt better on really fast slopey greens than they do on greens that where guys can make a lot of putts because they just don't simply make a lot of putts. Doesn't matter what kind of greens that they're on. So they tend to putt better on these because those other players are used to making putts and they just don't make them on a week like this.
Yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic to think about for the greens, especially the greens as harsh as these ones here at Oakmont. Next is our surprise play of the week, top three in the model. Now, if you watched our video last week, you were a member of Occupy Fantasy. You saw Victor Perez at the top of the model, ranked ahead of Rory McIlroy. We got a few messages saying you guys are clinically insane. The model's going to be right. It's going to be wrong sometimes, but Rory missed the cut. Victor Perez, top five most of the week. I think he finished T9. So shout out to Model for sniffing that one out for Victor Perez, who was like 4 or 5% owned. This week, Nero, number three is Thorbjorn Olesen, which I imagine will shock a lot of people.
Yeah, I don't know about it if it would be as shocking as Victor Perez because I think Olson is probably a better player than Victor Perez, but Perez was great. The model was awesome last week. Olson, I think this is his first full year on the PGA Tour. I'd have played. I know he played some in the fall. I don't think he was full time last year on the tour. Hasn't missed a cut in his last five events, and he's got a fifth and a seventh in his last seven events. He was 36th last week at the Canadian Open. He was on the fringes of contention there. He's 33rd at the PGA. He can give it a rip off the tee. So he's a pretty good stylistic fit. I think the model sniffed out another solid low owned play this week.
Love to hear that from you, Nero. Next, number four and number five in our model. While they may not look alike physically, their profiles look pretty similar this week, and that is Siwoo Kim and Shane Lowry.
Yeah, I mean, talk about two of your current form maestros. Again, Lowry was winning
Yeah.
last week for a good chunk of Sunday, and then played real poorly on the back nine or maybe like the last 10, 11 holes or so. But someone with a slew of really high finishes. In fact, no, Lowry missed the cut at the PGA, but before that, he hadn't been outside the top 25 in any finish since the Masters, where he finished 42nd. So, ton of really good finishes. Now, for Oakmont specifically, Lowry was the one in 2016 who had the lead in the fourth round. The weather was pretty tough in the fourth round, and he shot 76, I believe. And DJ came from way back to win. But I think Lowry had a multiple shot lead starting the day on Sunday last time he was here. So I think that bodes well for him, and he's obviously just playing very good golf lately. Another one who's playing very good golf lately, I haven't heard as much about, unless you've been reading the plug. Played him a few times in there. Is Siwoo. Hasn't missed a cut. Well, the partner event at the Zurich before that hadn't missed until the Texas Open. And one finish outside the top 30 at the Memorial. He was 31st, 17th, 15th, 8th. A lot of really good finishes in the last 2 months. And as a well-rounded type of game, like Siwoo absolutely fits. He's not really long, but he's long enough. Very good iron player, very good scrambler. The putter comes and goes, but again, this week I don't mind someone whose putter is inconsistent. So another two really solid plays, I think, from the model.
And just to highlight the softness of the pricing, Lowry 7,800, Siwoo Kim 6,900. When do you ever see that? Lowry is at least 8K in major championships, and in normal events, he's 9K plus.
Yeah. Well, Lowry sub 8 and Siwoo sub 7 is just absolutely stupid. Like, there's no way those two guys should be priced that way, even in this field. Like, just, again, I don't understand well, I understand what DraftKings was doing. Again, this is for people who play a lot of PGA DFS. These are the weeks they get the most casual play out of any weeks of the year. They don't want to get a whole bunch of messages from casual players being like, I can't even put together a lineup. Like you can easily put together lineups with a whole bunch of name players and including Scotty Scheffler. That's why they do the pricing this week. But for those two specifically, the pricing, they're criminally underpriced.
Absolutely. And now we just had two guys who looked similarly in their profiles. We have another two guys who look similar in their own profiles. It's Russell Henley and Corey Connors.
Yeah, two
Say
Connors
it.
is the epitome of the ball striking robot. Henley, not quite. He's close. He's just not quite all the way there like Connors is. But two like outstanding iron players. Henley is funny because I don't think the average person understands. He's ranked, I think, sixth in the world right now. And how's the guy that's ranked sixth in the world priced where he's priced in this salary range makes absolutely no sense to me. I understand that he hasn't had like the most success at majors, but he's played pretty well in a lot of really tough events, including the fact that he won the Arnold Palmer back in March. So like sign me up for Uncle Russ this week. Just really really bad pricing. And Connors again, another good stylistic fit. Who's well rounded and whose lack of touch with the putter just doesn't hurt him as much this week as it does in other weeks. So it should really play, tilt towards his favor this week.
I mean, this is a guy who hasn't missed a cut since January 9th, and he's $7,300. And he will no doubt miss the cut as chalk this week at 7,300. That's how this works, though.
I mean, of course he will, because I'll be over the field on him, so he's definitely missing.
All right, next we have two guys who you might not expect to be in the top 10 of a major model. It's Michael Kim, who we've talked about at length this season, and then Emiliano Grillo, who has picked up the pace here in the last couple of events, Nero.
Yeah, Michael Kim, well-rounded, very good approach player, and scores fairly well in tough conditions. So not quite as surprised to see him. Griot definitely surprised to see him that far up. But you know what? He is like a poor man's version of Corey Connors, like just an absolutely elite ball striker and good driver of the golf ball. And generally speaking, he's a terrible putter, but he's very good on fast greens. So just another one of those guys whose weakness with the putter is not going to, obviously it's going to hurt him this week. You will see him miss short putts and you'll see him miss other putts this week that you'll be like, why couldn't he make that? But relative to the rest of the field, that it just won't hurt him as much this week as it would hurt him other weeks. So he could be a sneaky, decent play.
And we'll close out the top model plays. We'll give you a bonus play. Number 10 and number 11. Two guys in the 9K and above range. One is 9 and one is 10. It's John Rahm and Patrick Cantlay. Rahm, Nero, I've seen some people be on as a sneakier stud pick to win this event. How do you feel about Rahm at this course? And then talk to me about Cantlay as well.
I mean, it should be a good fit for Rahm. I mean, Rahm is seemingly back to or close to the John Rahm, that we would expect. 14th at the Masters, despite shooting 75 in the first round. Eighth at the PGA top 10, right? He shot 73 in the last round. Obviously, if you watched it, he was right there until the very end. Still can't seem to like really win the events on live, but he never finishes worse than like seventh or eighth. So yeah, it should be a good fit for him. Well rounded. Obviously, he can pound the ball off the tee, fairly accurate given his length. Elite iron player, as we all know, and good enough with the putter. So yeah, I think Rahm is a great selection this week. And Cantlay is kind of like the epitome of like just the well-rounded golfer. Obviously, we know about his struggles in majors. We know that he doesn't tend to play extremely well in majors. At some point, you would think that he's going to shake that tag a little bit, but I think Cantlay is a very good fit this week. He was 12th at the Memorial. Yes, he missed the cut at the PGA. 36 at the Masters. Again, as we've said, not the best at majors in his career. But I like the kind of like Patty Ice like dead temperament that he has. I think it's really good on a week like this where guys are really going to get tested emotionally and with their strategy and their ability to contain themselves at unfair breaks and things that don't make sense. He just kind of rolls right through those. And Scheffler, honestly, like if there's anything that's going to trip up Scheffler this week, it's that. Like he's very big on fair outcomes and wanting like a fair result for a well-struck shot. And sometimes you're just not going to get that. You're not just not going to get that this week. So, but yeah, I think in an event like that, I give a little more. Normally, I dock Cantlay more for his lack of performance in majors, but considering how much of a intense test this one's going to be, I think I'll actually bump him up a few spots.
And that's an interesting subjective take. That's why we have Nero on the shows and writing the daily plugs, because he has golf insight that at least I can't think of and most of us can't think of. So shout out to Nero for that. Now let's move on and let's look at the industry projections. There are a certain set of industry PGA DFS projections that are pretty predictive in terms of which golfers will be higher owned in high dollar GPPs, small field GPPs, less than 1,000 players or less. If you're new here, basically what we do is we look at these projections and we say that these guys that are at the top of the projections, when you open your high dollar GPP, these golfers are going to be much higher owned than they are in the $25 millionaire or the $15 over on FanDuel, the flagship GPP. And especially on a week like this, these could be guys, especially the cheaper ones, that you think, okay, maybe I avoid these guys in my small field, high dollar tournaments, just because they'll be even higher owned in those contests. Now, if you look at last week, the Fade the Chalk did not do great because two guys on that list was Ryan Fox and Cameron Young, who finished first and fourth at the RBC. So it's not going to work out every week, but more often than not, just having this information is extremely important in the context of building your small field lineups. So, Nero, who do we expect to get the high stakes bumps this week?
Yeah, the four across both sites pretty much talked about them except for one of them, and I don't think they'll be a surprise to anybody. So Scotty Scheffler, Bryson DeChambeau, John Rahm, and Corey Connors. So I expect all four of those players to be more owned in the high stakes contest across both sites. I'd add Joaquin Neiman and Shane Lowry to those four for DraftKings. Now Neiman came out of nowhere with a 63 on Sunday to win the Live golf event in Virginia. That's his fourth Live win, I think, in his last 8 starts, which is just absolutely ridiculous. So there's a guy who wins Live events, whereas Rahm doesn't win, but Rahm is more consistently finishing in the top 10. And then over on FanDuel to our core four of Scheffler, DeChambeau, Rahm, and Connors, I would add Andrew Novak, Chris Gotterup, and Matt McCarty. And again, when we get into some of those lesser names on FanDuel, those guys are usually just straight up mispriced for their odds to win in the outright betting markets. And also, it is a little bit easier on FanDuel to put together stars and scrubs lineups due to their pricing scheme. Although this week, DraftKings decided to price everybody like FanDuel does. So I think you can make stars and scrubs lineups just as easily on DraftKings this week as you can on FanDuel, which is usually not the case. So.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because if you play on both sites or you just play on one or the other, or you just play on FanDuel, think about using that strategy this week. How you normally build lineups on FanDuel will apply to DraftKings because of the pricing. It is a really interesting dynamic this week. All right, let's move on to the betting markets. This is a segment that everyone loves, and we take a look. Again, it's only Monday afternoon as we record this. We're looking at how odds have moved as of Sunday night until now. We'll have a much better and clearer picture of the betting markets by Wednesday afternoon and Wednesday evening. And at that time, Nero will go into our daily plug at occupyfantasy.com, give us his Wednesday betting market update, and then I will post our final trifecta plays in our Discord server Wednesday night. A trifecta play is at all of the sharp sportsbooks that we monitor. A golfer is classified and marked as a trifecta play if their odds to win have improved at every sports book. That means different groups, different books are respecting that this golfer's odds to win are probably better than everyone initially anticipated. And these guys typically perform extremely well in DFS. Just an example, Cam Young was on this list last week. So Nero, it looks like we have 2 guys so far that have met the trifecta status. Again, this could change. They could be bumped off this list by Wednesday. But as of now, we got at least 2 guys on the trifecta list and a handful more that have seen moves at multiple books, just not all books.
Yep. So those 2 so far, Xander Schauffele and Victor Hovland. So first of all, I think, especially on a week like this, course being so difficult, I think when you get done with the trifecta list, no matter what size it is, I think it's mostly just going to be guys like really elite level players, because those are the types that can actually win this week rather than just get like a high finish. So, I think Hovland, I've already talked about why he would fit so well here. Just very well rounded with the ball striking. Definitely in the ball striking robot side of the spectrum. Not great with the short game. Again, that's obviously going to hurt him this week. Just won't hurt him as much relative to other weeks on tour. And Schauffele probably doesn't need too much introduction. Obviously, great ball striker. He's also very good on fast greens, lag putting. So I think if we expect that skill to come to the fore this week, then that's good news for Xander.
Yeah, and we had the concerns earlier in the year him coming off that rib injury. It seems like he's knocked a lot of that rust off Nero, and seems like he's good to go. So I mean, more than inclined to play Xander in my player pool, especially if he cements his trifecta status on Wednesday. And who are the three other guys that we've seen moves at multiple books so far? Just not all three or four.
Yeah, Jordan Spieth. So Spieth didn't used to be, but he certainly is now. He's actually like probably one of the top 20 drivers of the golf ball on the PGA Tour,
Which
which
is
is
crazy.
don't know that yeah, crazy, right? I don't know that I'd ever thought I would say that. And now here's a guy that if he can do that with his driver this week and just be somewhat okay with his irons. Now here's one guy who we know can handle fast slopey greens and is a great lag putter from far away. Should be able to make like difficult 20 footers and that kind of thing. So could theoretically go well if he can have that driver performing like it has for the last, call it like 9+ months. And then the other two, we already talked about one of them, Joaquin Neiman. Again, like I said, he won last week with that 63. Good approach player. He's maybe I would like him to be maybe a little bit more accurate with the driver, but we know he can absolutely rip it. So if you're going to be elite in the distance, I don't care as much that you're not going to be elite with the accuracy because even the accurate guys are going to miss their fair share of fairways this week. And then the last one is Adam Scott. So again, someone not known for his short game is known for the way that he hits the golf ball. Pretty good scoring. Decent, well-rounded. Hasn't been having the greatest season, so someone I'll definitely keep an eye on because if he ends up as a trifecta play, I think he would qualify as someone that was like a trifecta play from nowhere. That I would be wanting to keep an eye on and making sure that I got them in my player pool.
Especially at 6,600, and especially in Scotty Scheffler lineups. We'll monitor his trifecta status
Hmm.
and his ownership throughout the week. Just really quickly, your point on Neiman. And I think if you're looking at your own metrics this week, off the tee, give me someone who's it can at least blast it and is top in driving distance or is hyper accurate. Those guys in the middle, those are the guys where it kind of gets lost on how they gain strokes off the tee this week.
Yep, 100%. Like you need to be stand out in one of those two areas. Like someone who's not long at all, like Bud Cauley, I think would be playable this week, one of my golfing boyfriends. And because he's so accurate with the driver. And he's a very good approach player, decent enough short game, not great with the putter, but again, that's not going to hurt him as much this week. So, someone like him who is way down at the other end of that spectrum, I still think is playable because he's not kind of in that muddy middle where he's like, yeah, I'm sort of pretty long, but I'm not that accurate. Like he's at least got one standout skill with the driver, and those are the kind of guys I want to play this week.
Absolutely. So you might have seen the graphic on screen with the check mark, the bingo, Nero bingo. Nero says the phrases every week here on Daily Play, whether it's ball striking robot, golfing boyfriend, balance build, which we might get to here in a second. So if you're playing along at home, go ahead and mark those off your bingo card. Now, as we close out the show, showdown and weather notes, and we'll build a lineup here in a second. Nero, are you seeing anything in the forecast that can determine how we build our lineups this week?
Looks like it was maybe going to rain a little bit this afternoon, so I'll be curious to get some reports back from press conferences or just watching the Golf Channel to see if it actually did rain. I mean, they're going to be playing in a dome on Thursday and Friday. Like, almost would never see conditions like this in Pennsylvania at this time of year. But like, I don't know that the wind is going to be above like 6 or 7 miles an hour, and that's for the gusts for all day Thursday and Friday. Should be just like absolutely glorious weather those 2 days. Wind picks up a little bit Saturday afternoon and could be significant wind on Sunday, like gusts up to 20 miles an hour. Be real curious if that actually happens. Looks like we might get some rain on Sunday also. So But when it comes to lives, sorry, it looks like we're going to get rain Saturday and Sunday. It's just going to depend. I don't know if it's going to be all day type rain or thunderstorms. Just gonna have to wait and see. I think a little bit on that, but you can't really control what happens on the weekend. Yes, I'd probably prefer to have like a Lowry or somebody like that who can handle the wind a little bit on the weekend. But if you can't get to the weekend, it doesn't matter. So, Thursday and Friday look to be just like pristine conditions with no wave advantage either way, and probably not going to have any bearing on my lineup choices.
I'll give you a round four showdown tip, Nero. I know you probably know this, but for the viewers out there, again, our Occupy model has rankings for every showdown slate as well, and the round four model has been especially hot, mostly due to the discrepancies in how the field plays the guys at the top of the leaderboard versus those in the middle or at the bottom of the leaderboard. Nero, now on weeks like this where it is harder to score fantasy points, not many birdies to go around, you compare that to a week where there are a lot of birdies to be made, and on round four, we can play guys lower down the leaderboard in Birdie Fest because they can rack up points that can overcome the place position differential for those guys that are further up the leaderboard. And not necessarily the case on weeks where a good showdown score might be 30 points in round three and round four. So while we like to get contrarian in round four showdown, it's a little bit harder this week because the placement points matter so much in terms of fraction of your fantasy score. So just keep that in mind as you're building for round four this week.
Yeah, placement points as a whole are just going to matter the most this week than they probably matter all year. In fact, I think this is the one week of the year where getting 6 of 6 across might actually hurt you occasionally when that sixth guy that you had was, T18 starting the day on Saturday and he was getting a bunch of bonus points for you and everything. And then he shoots 79, 78 Saturday, Sunday, loses all the bonus points and barely scores any fantasy points whatsoever because all he makes is bogeys and double bogeys. And so, this is absolutely the week where really good 5 of 6 and 4 of 6 lineups can beat 6 of 6 lineups because the guys at the bottom, the bottom 40 players that make the cut, like they're just not going to score a lot of fantasy points on Saturday and Sunday. So, don't give up if you don't have a lot of guys across. Actually, it should be a great week for me. I'm an elite 5 of 6 and 4 of 6 lineup maker on both DraftKings and FanDuel, so I expect to really shine this week.
Yeah, if you out there as a viewer, if you are the king or queen of getting 5 out of 6, this is your week to shine. So let's gear up for the U.S. Open. So now let's help everyone out and let's build a practice lineup. This is how we would hand build a lineup. Generally, Nero and I use our lineup builder at Occupy Fantasy to build our 150 lineups, but even our small field lineups as well. But if you don't have access to our lineup builder, these are the strategies that we use when we hand build a small field GPP lineup. Less than 500 players, less than 1,000 players could work as well. Limited entries, you're playing against some pros. And if you're not playing against pros, you're playing less than $3 contest or less, then these concepts apply even more. And the strategies that we use, in no particular order, who are the cheapest guy that we feel comfortable using in our lineup, which golfers are checking multiple boxes for us in terms of what the model is saying, the betting markets, Nero's takes in the daily plug at Occupy Fantasy, and then how does ownership fit into all this as well. So Nero, if we play the first game, who's the cheapest player we feel comfortable using? Now, I have a name. It's Matt McCarty. Emiliano Grillo is also the same price, and he is likely to be lower owned, and he is in the top 15 of the model. I would be certainly fine with playing either one of those guys. Do you have a preference between those two or a third name that you can throw into the mix?
Yeah, I mean, probably Olson is the safest at 6K, but he might get above 5% ownership. So I wouldn't be surprised if he becomes like a somewhat popular value as the week goes on. I think I prefer McCarty over Grillo just a bit because McCarty has shown his ceiling a little bit more in 2025 than Grillo has. Even though Grillo obviously has a bigger and longer body of work than McCarty does. But yeah, if I had to choose between those two, I would take McCarty. And I think I'm with you that McCarty is right around that lowest price player that I'm comfortable using. I mean, McCarty has 6 top 20s since his top 20 at the Players in March, and that includes a 14th at the Masters. So,
And we didn't talk about him in the model section, but he's just outside the top 10 within that top 15. So he checks that box as well. So as we said earlier, it makes it so easy to fit Scotty here. Let's just fit Scotty in at 14-4. And with Olesen and McCarty in that lineup to go along with Scheffler, that leaves us 7,900 per player. A normal week, you may say, I don't know about the 7,900 players, but we already talked about how soft the pricing is, Nero. We could go hashtag balanced build here and go with a couple high sevens, low eight guys, or we could go lower sevens and get another stud in the mix. So what would be the next step you would take?
Yeah, I think if I think of this as a slightly smaller contest, then I think I would again hashtag balance build. That's my ethos. So I would probably stay in that area. In the largest field stuff, I would not be afraid at all to go back up. Maybe even grab a Bryson. Certainly a Rom or a Morikawa or even a Ludwig would absolutely fit in here without too much stress. But I think we can click Lowry 7,800. We already talked about him. Now we've got 8,000 left basically for our last two spots. Um, Good question next. You got Henley at 7,400. We've already talked about him. You got Spieth at 7,500. Maybe he'll be a little bit lower on the ownership scale than Henley. Maybe they're close. I would not mind either one of those two in this lineup if you had a preference.
Yeah, and that was just the next point I was going to make. There is a chance, again, this is Monday. We don't have refined ownership projections just yet, but Olsen or McCarty could be a little bit higher owns. Maybe not 10%, 15%, but if they're at 5 to 10%, that would qualify as higher owned for a player in that salary range. Lowry, we know will be popular at his mispricing. We know Scheffler obviously will be 40% plus. So now we have to be extremely cognizant of ownership here. So let's just say if we're looking between Spieth and Henley, let's say it's Wednesday and we have the most up-to-date ownership projections. Let's just go with Spieth and assume he's a lower-owned version. This could change by Wednesday, but these are the thoughts that should be going through your head as you're building this lineup. And Nero, that would leave us 8,600. Now we could go Neiman here, and we expect him to be extremely popular. But this is a great way in large field or even small field GPPs tournaments alike, where Neiman extremely popular, coming off live. Or we could pivot to what is right now a trifecta play in Victor Hovland at assuredly lower ownership for just $100 less.
Bingo. Yes, absolutely. Hovland is the correct answer on the last puzzle piece for this lineup as it's constructed. Now, if you get lower ownership on Olsen and McCarty, and Spieth doesn't get above, like 10 or 11%, I think you could probably stuff Neiman in here and you'd be fine. But Hovland not only leaves the $100 on the table, but he's going to be half the ownership of Neiman, or maybe something close to that. So yeah, he's absolutely the right answer on how to finish this lineup.
And on a week and on a course where we're looking to have and subtract ownership whenever possible, this is a great example of doing it. So, Nero, this was a really well constructed lineup. Just really quickly, you mentioned going up to Bryson. Let's say we have Olesen, McCarty, Scheffler, and we double dip with Bryson. Now, 6,450, once again, you may say, damn, that's really tough down there. But look at the low 6Ks. You have golf and boyfriends, Bud Cauley and Davis Riley. We have Lucas Glover. We have Nick Taylor, Novak, who we've talked about, Michael Kim, Dietrich, Rye, Thompson, like real PGA Tour players, unlike most weeks where we're looking at the low 6Ks and we don't even know who half those guys are.
Yeah, one of the original golfing boyfriends, Davis Riley at 6,200. Boyfriend to the model, Lucas Glover at 6,200, also right in there. But yeah, Dietrich at 64, Rye at 64. I mean, Ben On and Cam Young, who are just dueling it out for the Canadian Open on Sunday, both at 6,500. Like, there's plenty of players that you could pick down in that range with that Bryson lineup. And again, I think more than anything, it just shows you that like it's not that hard to fit Scotty this week.
Correct.
So like, I'll be real curious to watch his ownership. But it's just not that difficult to play him.
And just really quickly, you also could double dip in the 5Ks and go the two guys we were talking about, McCarty and Grillo. That leaves you 7,200. And you can go with Sam Burns, who I know, Nero, you were talking to me about before the show, as an easy guy who's underpriced to fit into Scotty builds. And I think with the combo of Grillo plus McCarty, that would probably be enough low ownership to satisfy this lineup. So just another way you can go.
Agree, totally agree.
Cool. So All right, y'all, that will do it for this video. Appreciate everyone watching. If you liked the video, you appreciate the content, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. We do these PGA DFS videos every week. If you're into NFL best ball, we're starting our best ball series next week. You don't want to miss that. Make sure you're subscribed. Here on YouTube, it's free to do so. Just click the subscribe button right below this video. If you have any questions, or if you just like the show, you like the lineup building segment, drop a comment, let us know, give us your predictions, give us your thoughts. We're happy to answer any questions. And because we're recording this on Monday, we have an extra day for you to answer your questions. So drop a comment in the drop a question in the comments, and we'll get back to you before the tournament begins Thursday morning. A little content scheduling update. The daily plug will be up Tuesday night or Wednesday morning. That will be Nero's top plays, his final top plays, his course breakdown. The best part of his plug, the lineup construction tips. So whether you're playing on FanDuel or DraftKings, depending on the contest type and size, you just scroll to that section in the plug, read his lineup construction outline, and you just plug and play that formula with your plays into whatever tournament or cash game you're playing. It's the best part of the daily plug. And then Wednesday afternoon, he will come in, give his betting market update, and I'll post the final trifecta plays in our Discord Wednesday evening. I know we do these videos for everyone to have free content. That's why we do them. And most people aren't going to pay for content, and we understand that and we appreciate that. But if you want that extra edge, as little as $7 per week can get you access to everything we just talked about at OccupyFantasy.com. Links in the description, or you can just go to OccupyFantasy.com. We would love to have you as part of our community. So for Nero, I'm Brian. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Good luck and enjoy the U.S. Open.